Okay, man, remember the rules, right?
Click on got it.
Okay, we are live. I'm going to mute everyone and we're going to share it on a couple of platforms and then we will get rolling.
But I came to listen to your shenanigans. Yeah,
Oh yeah. We're almost there. I have two more places to share and we will get rolling. Thanks for being so patient. Good evening, Sandra Lee. Okay, we are done sharing it and we are now going live. And that includes you, Baruch. Okay.
So I haven't seen that area.
We're live.
Okay.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. 3 times I said we're live. Okay, I think we got the memo, many. Have a seat, grab a chumash, open up to page 752. Page 752. And we are in the Parsha of Emor. We're in the book of Leviticus. It is a Torah portion of Emor. And one of the things that makes Emor, I guess, somewhat, page 752, somewhat of a Parsha that we're familiar with is that it's a Parsha that includes all the Jewish holidays. So when the Jewish festivals come around, we have various portions from Leviticus and Deuteronomy that refer to all the major Jewish festivals, starting in the order of how they happen. So Passover, Shavuos, which in English they call it the Festival of Weeks or the Festival of Pentecost. That's the fancy English translation. We just call it Shavuos. And then we have Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. We have Sukkot, the Festival of Tabernacle, the Festival of Booths. And then you have, and that's the biblical, and the Shmini Atzeret is the 8th day after Sukkot. And today our focus is going to be on the holiday of Sukkot and some of the interesting paradoxes that exist within this holiday and what that says about the ability and the possibility for Jewish unity. For the idea that we can see something beyond ourselves, right? We live in a very narcissistic society. I've said this before, and I don't get sick of saying it, that Chief Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of the United Kingdom of blessed memory, not the United Kingdom of blessed memory, Rabbi Sachs of blessed memory. We could debate at a different time whether the United Kingdom is of blessed memory. I think they're inaugurating a new king this weekend. I'll just keep my mouth shut till after the weekend. But he once said that the problem of our generation is Steve Jobs. He messed up the whole generation. And everyone looked at him like, Steve Jobs? I mean, the Apple dude? I mean, what? I said, yeah. He created a generation that everything's I. iPad, iPhone, iTouch, iPod, iMac, everything is I. And you create a generation where everyone lives in the I. And it's a very selfish holiday. And unity and selfishness don't work together. It's impossible for harmony and narcissism to work hand in hand. It just doesn't work. And it's not just a solution for the Jewish people. It's not just a solution for universal peace. It's a solution for relationships with family, with spouses, with parents. When you're a narcissist and you're selfish, there is no room for anyone else. And there's not even room for God. Like the Remendel of Kutsk said, the famous Remendel of Kutsk, the Hasidic master, and one of his students said to him, where's God? And Remendel of Kutsk said, wherever they let him in. Right? We don't let God in. There's no room for him. Rabbi Dov Greenberg is a rabbi that we had him here once, I think in 2008. We had him in the Hilton Garden Inn. He's the Chabad rabbi at Stanford University. Very smart man. And he once shared with me that what's the difference between the two words in the English language, soul and soil? It's the difference between an I and a U. Spelled the same way. It's an I and a U. If it's a U, it's soulful. And if it's an I, it's soil. It's not a way to live your life. So what I want to discuss today is right here. We're going to read inside a little bit. Then we're going to decipher it and break it up and get to the bottom of this holiday of Sukkot. And I know it's not the Sukkot season, but it's the first week in 8 months and I'm wearing short sleeves. So I'm going to feel like I'm in the Sukkot mood, in a very summer type mood. And Sukkot, by the way, except for Montana, most of the world, Sukkot is a holiday you do when it's warm outside. Only in Montana, we have to deal with snow on Sukkot. The rest of the world is enjoying beautiful weather. So we're going to go and delve into this holiday. So on 754, it says as follows. I guess it's in English, and on 753. God spoke to Moses saying, speak to the children of Israel saying, on the 15th day of the 7th month is the festival of tabernacles, a period of 7 days for God. The first day is a holy celebration. You should not perform any manual work. For the period of 7 days, you should bring a fire offering to God. So when the temple stood, in addition to having a sukkah, an outdoor booth in which you eat and drink, and many Jews sleep and you study, you live outdoors in this booth. When there was a temple, you also brought offerings. And then it says the 8th day will be a holy celebration for you, and you should bring a fire offering to God. It is a time when God holds back the Jewish people to be with him for another day, which is referring to the 8th day after Sukkot. You should not perform any manual work. And then we're going to skip over a couple of verses to verse 39. And then it says as follows. On the 15th day of the 7th month, when you gather in the produce of the land, you should celebrate the festival of God for a period of 7 days by bringing the festival peace offerings, but you should not bring these offerings on the Sabbath. The first day should be a day of rest, a rest day, and the 8th day should be a rest day. On the first day, you should take for yourselves the fruit of the citron tree, which we call in Hebrew the esrog, or the etrog, which dwells on its tree for the entire year and whose wood tastes like the fruit. The fronds of a date palm, branches of a myrtle tree, which are plaited like cords, and willows of the brookside. So we have the 4 species: the willow, the myrtle, the citron, and the fronds of a date palm. You should rejoice before God, your God, for a period of 7 days. You should celebrate it as a festival to God for 7 days in the year, an eternal statute throughout your generations, and that you celebrate in the 7th month. And then it says for 7-day period, you should live in the booths, in the sukkahs. Every native Jew and convert should live in the booths in order that your ensuing generation should know that I caused the children of Israel to live in clouds of glory that resemble booths when I took them out of the land of Egypt. I am God, your God. So there's a 7-day period every single year, 3,335 years since the Exodus from Egypt. Every single, it's a fascinating thing. Think about it, just a fascinating number. 3,335 years from the day the Jews left Egypt, there's been a holiday called Sukkos, or Sukkot, if you have a Sephardic pronunciation. And for that many years, for that many centuries, for that many millennia, the Jewish people have gone into a sukkah, to an outdoor booth, and we celebrate for 7 days. And there's 2 primary, in addition to the prohibition of doing creative work on the holiday, like every Sabbath and every Shabbos and every holiday, there's 2 unique mitzvahs, 2 unique commandments for this holiday. Number 1, to be in a sukkah, to spend as much time in the sukkah. And number 2 is to take those 4 species together, and we do a blessing on them. But the point is to bring them together as one entity, even though they're 4 separate species, and celebrate the oneness that you can create, even though they represent 4 different types of individuals, which we'll talk about soon.
Tabernacles and booths the same?
In this context, for sure. Yeah. Tabernacle is like a temporary dwelling. That's why the tabernacle, the Mishkan, was called a tabernacle, because it was temporary compared to the Holy Temple. Very good point. So now, well, I want to delve in a little bit here. This is a talk from the Rebbe, blessed memory, from the early 70s. So the Rebbe asks, and I'm going to start tonight's discussion with this question. You have a question?
Yeah.
What's your question?
Is a tabernacle the same as a sukkah?
No, well, on Sukkot it's the same as a Sukkah, but when we say the Mishkan, in the Midbar where they had the Mishkan, that's also a tabernacle. Okay. So we're going to begin tonight's discussion with a question. And the question is a linguistic question or a grammatical question. When it comes to the 4 species that we just read about, it says in Hebrew, and then obviously translated as well, but in Hebrew it says, in verse 39, verse 40, it says, "Lokachtem lochem b'yom harishon." You shall take for yourselves, in the plural, for yourselves on the first day of the holiday. So it says about the 4 species that you take it, but you take it in the plural. It's not an individual, it's us as a community. And when it comes to the holiday itself of sitting in the sukkah, in the book, not here, but in the book of Deuteronomy, it says, Chag HaSukkos Tasa L'cha. The holiday of Sukkot you shall do for yourself in the singular, not in the plural. So when it comes to the four species, it says plural. When it comes to the sukkah itself, it says it in the singular. And everything in the Torah is exact. There's no, oh, they just wrote it that way, whatever. The author, there's no authors, it's God. And so he had a point in telling us why this is plural. This particular aspect of the holiday is plural. This particular aspect of the holiday is singular. And so we need to get to the bottom of it. And once we get to the bottom of it, we'll have a better understanding in general about this holiday and what it represents, because it's so important. Because very often you hear Jews talk about various Jewish holidays and go, I like this holiday, I don't like that holiday. I mean, I'm more of a Hanukkah Jew than a Pesach Jew, more of a Shavuot. And the truth is, of course, we're all entitled, and our emotions connect us more with some things over others. But if we're going to if we're going to be really frank and honest, which we try to do in our Wednesday night class, the only reason anyone would ever say that a particular Jewish holiday doesn't speak to them is because they don't know really what it's about. That's just factual. They've never had the opportunity to delve deep into why we're doing what we're doing. And therefore, their childhood experience of whatever holiday it was miserable because either their parent wasn't a good cook, so the food wasn't good, or the rabbi in the synagogue was boring to death, or they just had no idea why they're doing what they're doing. And it seemed odd. Their friends weren't doing it. And so they had this bad taste left in their mouth. But if we get to the bottom of every holiday and you spend time delving into the mystical and the layers of homiletical interpretation within every holiday, there's no such thing as a boring Jewish holiday. You can still like one over the other, but there is no such thing as a meaningless, boring holiday for anybody. So what is the difference between the plural and the singular when it comes to the holiday of Sukkos? So what Chassidus explains is that there's two levels of unity amongst the Jewish people. There's two types of bringing people together. The Medrash tells us, the oral tradition tells us, that the four species that we gather on the holiday of Sukkot represent four types of Jews. And by shaking them and binding them together, I should say binding them together and then shaking them, represent the unity of all four types of Jews. Yes. I'm going to say it right now. Very good. Right? So even when you take the four and you bind them together, right, like we do in the Sukkah every year, which is important, which is vital, you have to bind them together. They're still four separate entities. You don't turn them magically into one thing. It's still a myrtle, and it's still a willow, and it's still a frond of a palm, of a date palm, and it's still a citron that comes. In my case, it comes from Calabria, Italy. Most of the esrogim, the citrons we have in the shul, come from Israel. But the point is, you're creating a unity between these four species, and I'm going to answer Manny's question in a moment of what those four species represent. But the only way to fulfill the mitzvah is when you have all four bound together, connected together, and that represents a form of external unity. It doesn't turn them into one entity. It's not blended into one creation, but yet is a form of unity. What do the four represent? You have the citron Jew. The citron is this beautiful lemon-looking like, much more expensive than a lemon, and it's not a lemon, it's a citron. It grows on the tree all year round.
Don't use it in salad.
You could use it in salad, but it's going to be an expensive salad. And the citron has an incredible, if you know what you're doing, it has an incredible taste. You can cook it and make it into a jelly. I have not had success with it, but I know many people that have, and it turns into a delicious jam. But it also has an incredible aromatic smell. It's really an incredible smell. So you have this fruit that grows wherever, Israel, Italy, wherever, mostly Israel and Italy. Great smell, great taste. Then you have the frond of the date palm. So what is that? It represents the dates. Dates have an incredible taste, but there's no smell. A myrtle smells amazing. By the way, I love smelling the myrtle on Sukkos. But it has no taste. You put a myrtle in as many pots as you want. You can try to cook it. It doesn't have a taste. Right? Chavi has like 9,000 ingredients in all her seasonings. I haven't seen myrtle probably for a good reason. I'm not saying no one's ever used it. Maybe you'll find a tribe in Africa that uses it, but it doesn't have a good taste. And then you have the willow, the brookside willow in particular, the one that grows by the water. And the willow has no taste and no smell. And it represents four types of Jews. You have the citron Jew. They have a great taste. They're internalizing the teachings of the Torah. But they also have an aromatic smell. They are doing the mitzvos externally as well. They're living their life as a Jew externally too. Then you have the date Jew. He learns a lot of Torah. He or she learns a lot of Torah. They're not doing action. They're studying in the study hall. They're not translating it into the world of action. So they taste good. They're internalizing, but they're not externally. They're not living like a Jew. They're not living up to everything they're learning. Then you have the Myrtle Jew. And I would venture to say that most Jews today that are involved in Judaism somewhat represent the Myrtle Jew. If they're involved, they're a Myrtle Jew, which means they smell great. They're doing a lot of mitzvahs. They're coming to shul. They're putting on film. They have a mezuzah. They're keeping, they're keeping Pesach. They're eating matzah. But how much time do they spend in studying and internalizing and tasting the incredible depths of the Torah? Not as much as they should. So the Myrtle Jew smells great, but doesn't taste so good. And then you have the winner of all, which is the majority of Jews alive in the world, the willow. They don't spend any time studying Torah. They never opened up a Jewish book in their life. I mean, if you get them, maybe they said they read Elie Wiesel's Night, and they think they read something from Judaism. Now, Elie Wiesel's book is incredible and gut-wrenching and important, but it's not Torah. And they're not doing anything either. They're just totally too. People ask me all the time, when you moved to Bozeman, were you poaching people from other congregations? I said, poaching. There's the vast 90% of Jews in Montana are unaffiliated. I have a lifetime of work just to deal with people that are unaffiliated, meaning it doesn't even speak to them to sign up or come to a shul. So the willow is the majority of Jews. And yet on the holiday of Sukkos, we take all four together. We bind them with a part, we take a part of the frond of the date palm, we bind them together, and we create an external oneness. But let's call a spade, it's external. When it comes to the actual mitzvah of going into the sukkah, many without the fingerprints, please, okay? When it comes to the actual sitting in the sukkah, there's a very famous statement in the tractate of Sukkot in the Talmud. In Sukkah, it says that all Jews are worthy of sitting in one sukkah. Meaning, what does that actually mean? It means if you were able to build a sukkah large enough to handle all the Jews, we can all go into the same sukkah and fulfill that commandment of being in the sukkah simultaneously as one. We're all surrounded by the same walls. There's a oneness that's created by that. That's a total immersion, because unlike the four species where you now have four different species and you're just holding them together, the sukkah, you're all surrounded. You're all in the same dwelling, surrounded and immersed in the same mitzvah. Now, if that's the case, if you look at the verse,
There'll be a lot of stock there.
yeah, it'll be a big sukkah. Again, practically, it's not practical, but it's an incredible teaching. Right? There's only one other mitzvah that I know that your whole body is immersed in, which is the mikvah, when you're immersed in a mikvah. But in a mikvah, you're not allowed to go with other people. It's immodest. It's one person at a time. You're undressed, you're unclothed. No one else belongs there. A sukkah, build a sukkah. I've seen sukkahs that can fit 500 people. It's an incredible sight to see. And that unity where we're all immersed in the same dwelling and the same holiness of the moment is something very, very special and unique. Which is why when it comes to the mitzvah of sitting in the sukkah, God says in Deuteronomy, the holiday of Sukkot you shall make for yourself in the singular. When it comes to the four species, it says lochem, to you in the plural. Because when it comes to the being in the sukkah, we're all like one body, like one wholesome organism. When it comes, the gymnastics has to stop. Thank you. When it comes to the four species, we're all like one body, and if we're one body, one organism, then we say it in the singular because we're one. So there's two levels in what unity looks like. And we're pretty good as a society at the right moments to tap into level number one. Take a bunch of people who are different and keep them together long enough to do something good together as a team, but we don't see each other as one. Right? Okay, you're a myrtle, I'm a citron. I don't mean me. I'm saying this guy's a citron, this guy's a myrtle, this woman's a willow, this one's a date palm. Okay, we can come together and do something as a united front for humanity. Wonderful. That's not true oneness. It's an important oneness because you're giving everyone their individuality and remaining united. But then there's something even greater than that, where we put our own ego aside totally And I'm not saying that's something that's doable 24/7, but think about the ability of removing our ego, removing our narcissism, removing our selfishness, and becoming totally immersed, not about me at all. It's not about whether I'm a Myrtle or whether I'm a Citron. It's not about me at all. It's about being in service without me, the I, being part of it all together. And that's why it's an interesting mitzvah. I'm allowed to work. Seth, if you build a sukkah on Snapdragon, what is it, Snapdragon? Where would he, yeah, did I get it right? That I could walk into your sukkah and fulfill the mitzvah. You built the sukkah. I'm not talking about private property issues here and trespassing. We'll leave that to the government. From a mitzvah perspective, the fact that you built a sukkah is enough for any Jew that wants to come into the sukkah and fulfill the mitzvah. I can do it with you because the sukkah represents a oneness in which we are now immersed in the same experience, and therefore my individuality, my selfishness, my ego goes out the door, and I'm able to come into your celebration, into your experience, and fulfill the mitzvah the same way you are in your sukkah. What about with the four species? Four species, the halacha is Jewish law dictates that every single obligated adult, meaning over the age of bar mitzvah, should have their own set of four. Now, of course, realistically, that's not what happens, even though we have quite a bit here in the shul. So what we do is, when I do a sushi party, I have in mind at the sukkah, at the party, that when I give someone the opportunity to make a blessing on the lulav and the esrog, on the four species, in my mind, that what I'm saying is that I'm giving it to them. It's a very interesting legal, we talk about legalese in the legal system. Here's some Jewish legalese for you, halachic legalese. It's called matana amanas lahav. It's a conditional gift. We know of gifts.
Having in mind to do Kaddish?
It's a conditional gift. It's a literal term in halacha. For example, I'm going to give you just an example for your entertainment. If a woman is about to get married, right? There's laws in Judaism about how a woman's the things that a woman owns, her property becomes, on some level, some of it becomes owned by her husband after she gets married. I know in today's day and age, you can't say that out loud, but I just did. It's all over the Talmud, all over halacha. There is a superiority, if you wish, in the male over female when it comes to marriage, in the ownership of product, especially historically when the men were the breadwinners and therefore the woman's out, he was providing. So if she came in with money, he got to tap into it. So what if a woman's really smart and she doesn't want it? What if her husband, he's going to get a hold of all her money? So before she gets married, she calls over her closest friend and says, hey, I want to gift you everything I own. It's a gift to you. But it's a gift that when I find the right time for it, it's a conditional gift. I want you to give it back to me. Halacha says that it's permitted. It's called a matana amanas lahachzir. It's a legalese, it's a technical halacha that I can give you a gift, for even if it's a temporary gift, even if the gift is on condition that you have to give it back. It's a baffling and an exciting and a fascinating concept. Now, you can't just throw it around and use it whatever you want. It's specific. There's all these details in the Talmud, discuss it at a great length in halacha, but there is this concept that I can give you a gift for whatever particular reason, right? Like when you want to lease, what we call it today, lease a piece of land. But if I can't take care of this piece of land, but I don't want the land to get ruined, right? If you're not going to plant on it for 10 years, you can destroy the whole property. So I'm going to come to you, I'm going to say, Randy, I want to give you a gift. I'm giving you this 20-acre piece of land. You can work it, you can eat from it, it's all yours. But it's a gift on condition that when time is up, whatever that time may be, I want it back. It goes back to being mine. It's a full-on gift with a time limit on the gift, with a stopwatch that says now it's over. Now, how does that apply to here? When I hand a little, you don't know this because I don't announce it, because I'm not going to make an announcement in the sukkah to people who don't understand Hebrew, don't understand the concept, but in my mind, I'm not lending my four species on sukkahs to every Jew that I'm shaking with, because if I was lending it, they couldn't fulfill the mitzvah. They have to have ownership. Lending is not ownership. When you lend something, or if someone borrows something, they're not the owner. They're borrowing it. The owner is still the owner. I'm just borrowing it. That's prohibited, because when it comes to the four species, there's still not the total unity, which means we are all separate individuals. And if we're separate individuals, how can I fulfill the mitzvah with your item? We're not the same. Oh, so what do? We give the lulav, we give the four species to every person as a matana, as a gift. It's theirs. Amanas lahach. on condition that they will return it after they fulfill their mitzvah.
Oh, so you give it to them to shake and
Each
whatever.
person that I give it to, when I give it, and I give it sometimes to 60 people in one evening, in my mind, every time I hand it to one of them, I'm giving them as a gift. And I need to know that. They don't necessarily need to know. That would be nice, but they don't need to. I'm giving to them as a gift so they can do their mitzvah with something that's theirs, and then the condition's over and they have to give it back. But the reason we have to go through that process is because the unity involved in those four species are still with so much individuality. There's still a level of, you can call it healthy ego, you can call it self-esteem, you can call it existence, whatever you want to call it. There's still too much of the I in the process that we can't just assume that we're all we're all immersed into the same reality. So therefore, if I'm going to share something with you, you are still you and I am still me, and I'm going to share it with you on a condition to make it happen for you because I still like the fact that we're together. But the ultimate unity is when we're immersed in the same sukkah and we become one in that reality, which is not doable when you're dealing with the four species. You have a question?
So how does the big huge sukkah, and then everybody's inside of it?
We're all surrounded by the same mitzvah equally, simultaneously.
What is the ownership?
You don't need ownership. I mean, all you need is one Jew to put it up, right? And because we're all one organism, we're all included. It's the collective organism of the Jewish people. You ever wonder, I'm just out of curiosity, this is not part of it, I didn't write the notes here for the class. You ever wonder why you go on a plane? At least I can speak for myself, and I know I've spoken to many Jews like that. You walk onto a plane, you see another person with a yarmulke, and you get excited. There's something about it. Or if you walk on a plane and you hear someone speaking Hebrew, and there's automatically, you feel like there's a connection there. Whether you say hello to them or not, that's your particular personality. If you're Chavi, you probably hide on the other side of the plane. The introvert, if you're me, you make sure to switch seats, so you park right next to them whether they like it or not, and you talk to them for the next 3 hours.
Even with the headphones on?
But the point is, we get excited. What is that? That the reality is that what that is the collective Jewish organism. We are one entity at the core. And on Sukkos, it's not a connection, it's one. Connection you could have with four different entities as well. We care. There's no one, right? There's no one that, a chassid once was sitting and he said, "Are you my friend?" He said, "Yeah, of course I'm your friend." "Are you my friend?" He says, "Yeah, of course." He says, "No, you're not." He said, "How do you know?" He says, "Tell me what's wrong with me. What's going on with me?" Because I have no idea. You didn't tell me. He says, "You're not my friend." A real friend would know. Now, obviously, that's an extreme statement, but there's something to be said about the natural intuition and oneness that exists with our people, despite all of our issues and fragmentation and division. And on Sukkos, we see that in all its glory. There's something so magical, and you've been there many times, and most people that I know have been there. You sit in a sukkah, and there's people from all flavors, and there's just this incredible. It's not even an inspiration. There's something magical in this immersion of what's going on here. And so we know there's a difference between the two mitzvahs of the holiday, but why? So what Chassidus says, what Chassidic philosophy says, is very deep and beautiful. There is a verse in Psalm 81. We say it actually in the Kiddush, when we sanctify the holiday day on the day of Rosh Hashanah. We say, Tiku b'chodesh shofar. We blow the shofar Rosh Chodesh in the beginning of the month of Tishrei. Ba'kesa l'yoyim chageinu. On the day of the festivities, it's concealed. It's a very cryptic verse. What's concealed? Who's concealed? What's concealed? Now, you could say simply it means that on Rosh Hashanah, it's the beginning of the month. So the moon is still just appearing. So it's still a concealment in the world, right? The moon doesn't fully come to completion, to full wholeness until the 15th of the Jewish month, which is Sukkos. So what does that verse mean? So Chassidus explains that Sukkos, the holiday, Yoyim Chageinu, when the verse says in Psalms, Ba'kesel Yoyim Chageinu, Yoyim Chageinu, the day of our festivities, is the holiday of Sukkos. And whatever existed in concealment on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, on the three holiest days of the year, the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, whatever spiritual energies existed but were concealed on those three foundational days of the year, they become revealed and felt, and we are inspired by on the holiday of Sukkos. So when you look at the month of holidays in the beginning of the year, you have 3 days of atonement and judgment, etc., Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and there's great, great spiritual energies that are coming in, newly created spiritual energies for the new year, but you don't get to feel them yet, right? You're still in a state of atonement, of repentance. It's a little sad, it's a little serious, it's a little this. Then Sukkot comes. It's called the holidays. Zman Simchas, the festival of joy. What are you celebrating? Because you're sitting in a hut. That's what the celebration on a spiritual level is, that now all those energetics that came into the world on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are now going from a state of concealment to a state of revelation. Now, if you want to divide them up particularly, you could do it as follows, says Chassidus. Sukkah, right, has the aspect of schach, which is the branches that we put on the roof of the sukkah, the greenery that we put on the roof of the sukkah. Schach in Hebrew, each Hebrew letter has a numerical value. So samach is 60, chaf is 20, so that's 80, 60 and 20 is 80, and chaf is another 20 is 100. So what does the schach, the ceiling of the sukkah, represent? It represents 100. What's 100? On Rosh Hashanah, on each day of Rosh Hashanah, we blow 100 blasts of the shofar. So where do you feel the revelation of the experience of repentance and the blowing of the shofar that we had on Rosh Hashanah? We feel that in the actual sukkah. When it comes to the 4 species, our sages say that we don't know on the Day of Atonement, on the day of Yom Kippur is the day that God decides what our year is going to look like. So we don't know, did we win the court case or not? Or were we successful or not? Was the verdict guilty or not guilty? Right? What? And so it says, the Medrash says that God says, take your lulav, take your 4 species, and you'll march out with your species, and we'll know that you guys were victorious. In other words, the holiday of Sukkot is a continuation. When you're holding your lulav, it's like a trumpet coming to war. You're marching into battle, right? Armies, when they march into battle, they have their instruments and they're going into war. It's a march to victory with joy. But what is that part of Sukkot, the 4 species connected to Yom Kippur? So the schach of the sukkah represents the 100 blasts of the shofar to Rosh Hashanah. The 4 species are represented or a reflection of the atonement of Yom Kippur, the fact that we were victorious. Now think about that for a moment. Rosh Hashanah, what do we do on Rosh Hashanah and when we blow the shofar? We accept the kingdom of God, the kingship of God for the next year. It's all about transcendence from self and devotion to God. And when you're in a state of transcendence, we're all the same. My ego doesn't matter here. So on Rosh Hashanah, we all stand together. We're all accepting God as our king. So the only entity that really matters right now is the king, is God. We're accepting the yoke of heaven. We're trumpeting with our shofar and accepting the kingdom. So therefore, by definition, it's all about God, not about us. So it's about transcendence. So you can actually attain true unity. Because it's not about me. It's about the king that we're crowning as the king for the new year. Where do we see that on Sukkos? In the sukkah. It's not about me. We're all immersed in the same mitzvah. We're all part of one. We're all part of this collective organism. So the schach, the roof of the sukkah, is connected to Rosh Hashanah. So the revelation of that unity and that transcendence from self that exists on Rosh Hashanah comes to fruition on Sukkos in the sukkah. Yom Kippur, on the other hand, what's Yom Kippur? It's all about regret, atonement, repentance. Suddenly, everyone's sins are different than everyone else. Right? Your sins are not mine are not yours. Everyone's dealing with their own spiritual journey and their own issues between them and God, right? And therefore, it's very much about self. It's not just about God and transcendence from self, like on Rosh Hashanah. It's very much about my particular journey and me seeking atonement for my issues. And if that's the case, we can still attain unity as a people, but it's the unity that you'll see in the 4 species, which is a unity where we still have very much our individuality, because it's a reflection of the Yom Kippur experience, not the Rosh Hashanah experience. So it's just an incredible web of interconnectivity between the holidays and how they're all really connected to each other. And the more time we spend delving deeper into why we do what we do. Whoever thought, okay, we do 100 blasts of the shofar. I thought that that's going to be connected to the ceiling of the sukkah, which is the numerical value of 100, but they're directly the Kabbalah, the Jewish mysticism that Rabbi Isaac Luria and their Chaim Vital and Moshe Cordovero, the Ramak, they all taught us this, because when you get that, now it's all clicking. I have many does all this. He has what do they call it? Magnetiles, and then he has his Legos. He's all days connecting things, and when they're finally done, you go, wow. Whoever thought it's going to come to this? But if you spend the time and you connect the dots, suddenly Judaism is not just, oh, well, we do this because we're commemorating him. And commemorating, it's not just about commemorating. It's about, what am I experiencing right now? I want to experience transcendence from my narcissistic self. Judaism gives us the tools for that. Rosh Hashanah, and then later sitting in the sukkah. I want to deal with my particular journey of repentance and changing my ways and becoming better and self-refinement. Okay, we have Yom Kippur, and then we have the four species. Unity, but not the ultimate unity. It's all there. And it's a vital lesson, number one, to spend the time to delve into the holidays, which is always an important thing. But it's also an important lesson, and with that I'm going to conclude, it's an important lesson in unity. There is so much division. And every day people come up with new reasons to divide us as a society, as a Jewish community living in Israel. There's reasons upon reasons upon reasons, and there's people that get paid big bucks, believe it or not. In Hebrew, we have a term for that. It's called Bali Machloikus. People that create division, quarrel. They create quarrels between people. It's not just gossiping. It's people that thrive of creating action that is based on division. And it's so, so sad. First of all, for these people themselves, because what kind of life do you must have if you're a person that's creating division and gossiping and negative? It's just, what does it say about you? How low is your self-esteem that you have to put other people down all day and create that kind of vibe? But more importantly, what it does to society and what it does to the fabric of our society. And so it's our job as Jews, as pillars, as lights in the community to say, as we say in Hebrew, Ad Kan. Done. No more. I don't know what the whole world's going to do, but I am not going to be one of those people that creates more division. I'm going to be an entity that finds every way under the sun to add light, to add meaning, to add unity, and to be able to immerse myself with others in the common goal of making this world a bright place. You never accomplish that by putting people down. You never accomplish it, no matter how right you may be. If all you do all day is spend your time proving why the other people are wrong, you are wrong, not them. And as we learned in JLI class yesterday, someone was telling the Rebbe about his big grandiose dream that he had, and he kept having this recurring dream about how he's going to ascend from this world because the world is too unjust. And he wanted to know what the meaning of that dream was. And the Rebbe wrote back to him that it's impossible that the dream means for you to make the world more just, because it's impossible for one individual to make the whole world just. It's just, that's the reality. There's going to be injustice in the world. So what the dream actually means is that you should look into your own soul and ask yourself, how unjust are you in the way you live your life and your relationship with God? You want to deal with injustice? Deal internally. Not start. Deal internally. You don't have to start. You could spend your whole lifetime making yourself an incredible version of what you could be. That's much harder than trying to change the world. And so the message of this is, unity doesn't start from your bumper sticker. I don't care if it says universal peace or you have the coexist one and you pay $2 for it. It does not create peace in the world. No one ever brought peace with a coexist sticker. And even if you have a Ukrainian flag, you don't either create peace anywhere. The Russians don't care if in Big Sky you have a Ukrainian flag. It makes no difference to them. You want to know how you make peace? First of all, make peace within yourself. Make sure you're in a place of tranquility with who you are at your core. And secondly, more importantly, live a life that represents unity and never represents division. People come into my office every once in a while and they go, Rabbi, you heard this person said about you guys or about Chabad? I'm like, okay. They're like, what do you think? I'm like, there's no time. There's Jews that need love. There's Jews that need matzah. There's Jews that need film. There's Jews that need mezuzahs. Why should I spend time now draining my cup, as Mick would say, circling my head, trying to think of what this person meant or didn't mean, or arguing? Who has time? There's a world that needs light. Now, if they're saying something from a Torah perspective that's inaccurate, it's my duty to correct and share the Torahs. But if it's about me, The Rambam says the greatest person, the greatest attribute is you hear people humiliate you and you don't respond. Or the other term is you should be from the ne'elavim ve'enam oilim, you should be from those that are humiliated but don't humiliate others. You will always be a winner that way. Because no one wants to hang around people that are humiliating other people. Maybe temporarily, it's juicy for 2 seconds. The long term, it's not where people want to be. You will win at the end of the game because you are a person of unity, light, and oneness. And that's who we are meant to be. That's who we should be. And if we incorporate it in our own lives, slowly the people around us will start doing it as well. And that's how you start changing societies. But your bumper sticker, sorry to break it, get your money back. It ain't going to do anything. Have a wonderful evening. I want to remind everyone that on Friday, it's Pesach Sheni, the second Passover, which means it's 1 month from the original Passover, and it's our Jewish tradition to eat a piece of matzah. So if you have some shmura matzah, you should wash for hamotzi and eat some matzah. If you don't, I'm happy to give you some free of charge. I'll give you some milk. You can come over anytime to get your dose of matzah. And we'll see you guys back here, God willing, next week. Have a wonderful evening.